Okay, dear, welcome back in our third session. And we were talking about operations strategies. And when we say operation strategies, the first thing we can come up with is manufacturing location, that where our plant would be located. And we also have to see that either we have to make the things ourselves or we need to get them from outside, which is outsourcing actually. Then we have to see that either we're going to make the things domestically or there are some international locations as well. Once the location of the organization, the facility is decided, then in operation strategies, the next step can be thinking about the systems layout. That either you need to go for product or process layout. And in terms of product and process layouts, there are different aspects we need to talk about. That what is the level of your customization based upon that either you're operating in a job shop style or you are going for mass production. Then even the job shop small batch production fits well with a differentiation strategy or not. That is the thing you need to look at. Continuous production, perhaps in terms of standardized products. And we have to see that by adopting continuous production, what would be the cost advantage you're going to achieve. Then you have to see that either you use robots and CAD/CAM facility. The CAD/CAM facility, as you all know, computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing versus labor-intensive manufacturing. You have to decide upon that. Then you have to see that either you need to go for modular manufacturing and just-in-time delivery of sub-assemblies. So what would be your manufacturing pattern and style? Then how would you be bringing in the continuous improvement system, lower costs and increase quality by adopting, suppose, just-in-time, by adopting, suppose, Kaizen, Kanban, Jitoka techniques. Now, decision areas of strategic operating, operations management, we are going to look at. And in that concern, there are 11 decision areas I have sorted out for you. And those areas are product and service design, capacity, process selection and layout, work design, location, quality, inventory, maintenance, scheduling, supply chains, and project management. And in these decision areas, you have to see that what decisions are going to affect. For example, in terms of product and service design, the areas you should be looking upon are costs, quality, liability, and environmental issues. In terms of capacity planning, you should be concerned with cost structures and flexibility. In terms of process selection and layout, you should be concerned with costs, flexibility, skill level needed, and the capacity itself. And from there, the capacity means your operations capacity, production capacity. And then work design, in area of work design, your decision would be related to the quality of work life, employee safety, and productivity. And when you talk about productivity, you should be clear that either you are concerned with or calculating your single factor productivity, multi-factor productivity, or total productivity, and how you're going to increase the productivity. These are the things you need to focus upon in work design. Then in location, you have to see the visibility and costs. In terms of quality, you need to look at ability to meet or exceed customer expectation. In terms of inventory, again, the costs and the shortages are major concerns. In terms of maintenance, cost, equipment, reliability, and productivity are concerns. In scheduling, flexibility and efficiency. In terms of supply chain, cost, quality, agility, shortages, vendor selection. And in terms of projects, you need to look at the cost, new product, services, or operating systems. Now, the concern is, out of the whole discussion, that what is in your priority? What are the decision areas you need to look at when you are making the operations strategy? And what are your priority aspects, either the cost or the flexibility or the quality, and what are the trade-offs you're going to make when you are dealing with the operations strategy? When you talk about purchasing strategy, as I told you in the last sessions, that there is a difference between the demand chain and supply chain, and there is a difference between the procurement and purchasing and logistics. So you have to be very much careful that when you are deciding for the purchasing strategies, you should be looking at sourcing components and supplies. Where can the highest quality components be found? Right? You have to search the market, you have to search the suppliers, and you have to see that which supplier is giving you the best quote and the best option. And even you can also go for outsourcing. Means our firm buys everything, which means buying on the open market or spot pricing, and you have to be careful about the price fluctuations associated with it. There can be long-term contracts with multiple suppliers. There can be sole sourcing, only one supplier improves quality, and there can be parallel sourcing that two suppliers provides protection. So again, you have to see that how you are going to maintain your better portfolio. And you can also plan to go for backward integration, that our firm has an ownership stake in the suppliers we use. And that can be related to the quasi integration, which means minority ownership position in a supplier. It can be tapered, which means produce some of what we need, but not all. And it can be full, which means produce all of our own needs. Right? So that can be again the decision related to the purchasing strategies and use of component inventories versus just-in-time supply deliveries. So it all depends that how much thoroughly you have gone through the discussion of your supply chain and demand chain, how much clear you are about your upstream movement and downstream movement in the industry, how much you are aware about the comparative force analysis, and what are your decisions and calculations related to the purchasing decisions. So when you are looking at the logistics, related to the logistics, do we have goods that must be transported or delivered? Okay, so types of materials transported, are they going to be bulky or compact? What material supplies or components you're going to transport? Raw material supplies and components you're going to transport. You're going to transport the finished goods, and the modes of transportation can be air, rail, truck, your barrage. So you have to see that how you're going to transport your product or service to the other site. So do we want dependability, low cost or high quality services? Again, the decisions related to the logistics would also include outsourced transportation or do it yourself. It's a very big decision because obviously buying all the transport by your own self would increase your initial fixed cost. So contract with others, that can be one of the idea. Use multiple shippers versus just one context. Consider batch deliveries, just-in-time arrangements, or it can be ownership in distribution chain. Again, these can be of three types. It can be quasi, which is limited, very limited, tapered, which is limited, and full, which is completely having the ownership in the distribution chain. So these are all the decisions, all the strategies you have to adopt when you talk about logistics concerns. Remember, whatever functional area you are talking about, whatever strategy you are thinking about, the first step is that you should be clear about objectives. And remember, as most of you are doing your FIP as well, you have to set objectives in every functional area as well. Because unless and until you have not decided your marketing objectives, financial objectives, your procurement objective, your logistics objective, how can you talk about the strategic options in each functional area? So let's see how and what type of human resource strategies prevail. For example, the first concern in human resource department can be related to the talent acquisition. And when you talk about talent acquisition, you have to recruit from outside versus internal development. These are the two things you need to look upon. That either you're going for internal recruitment or external recruitment. So that is the strategy related to the HR. You also need to see that you need to hire experienced people, highly skilled workers versus will train you option, or you offer top dollar wages and benefit versus mentoring and a career orientation. The second option you can have in human resource activities along with many others, that is work arrangements, that either the work is designed around individuals or in teams. Either the work is designed related to the narrowly defined jobs versus positions with discretion and autonomy, in which the vertical loading and the horizontal loading of the jobs is done, where there is job enrichment and job enlargement prevalent. You have gone for empowerment for that matter. So related to work arrangements, you need to see that on-premises work would be done or telecommuting is the option. In terms of motivation and appraisal, so what type of reward system you're going to use, either extrinsic or intrinsic? How would you assess the developmental opportunities and assessment of the rewards associated with them? How would you calculate the incentives for ideas, originality versus incentives for conformity? So these are different concerns in which HR people needs to decide based upon what objectives HR is going to achieve. When you talk about information system strategies, the main concerns are worker productivity and connectivity, in which employees can be networked together across the globe. You can go for extranets, you can go for different linkages, electronic linkages, EDIs, electronic data interchanges with your stakeholders. And there can be instant translation software from global firms. There can be follow the sun management, pass projects on to the next team, because you have planned that you're going to operate 24/7, and when you have to operate 24/7, you have to use this technique of follow the sun management. Then whenever there is the day, wherever in the globe there is day, your working would be shifted to that part of the world. Then sales and inventory management is another area related to the information systems strategies, that what ERP systems you are incorporating, what SAP systems you are incorporating, what modules you have incorporated, what repositories of different data you have maintained. You also need to see that how you're going to go for manufacturing resource planning systems. So internal sales and development of customer databases, CRM, digital CRM, that can be the concern. Instant sales reports allow immediate inventory or reorders, that can be another concern you need to decide upon. Then there would be shipping and tracking goods. For example, in terms of, we see that practice most commonly in terms of, say, Food Panda. We see these in terms of, say, courier services, that FedEx PowerShip software stores addresses, prints labels, etc., and tracking the progress of package shipment, FedEx and UPS, that can be the examples. So we have to be careful that what information system strategies we are having. And obviously, before thinking about the strategies, we need to know what are information systems objectives. Now, which functions can we outsource? That is a very important discussion. When you talk about global outsourcing, increases in efficiency and quality, remember that averages 9% reduction in cost and 50% increase in capacity and quality. This can be achieved by global outsourcing. Up to 70% of Boeing planes are outsourced. It's very astonishing figures I'm quoting, that up to 70% of Boeing planes are outsourced, built in just 4 months versus 1 year manufacturing. So that is the extent companies can go for global outsourcing. There was a survey conducted by AMA, and 94% outsource at least one activity out of the survey results. I'm quoting these figures. And 78% they went for outsourcing general and administrative activities. 77% were outsourcing human resource activities. 66% were outsourcing transport and distribution. 63% were outsourcing information systems. 56% were outsourcing manufacturing. 51 marketing. 18 finance and accounting. And at the same time, 25% were disappointed in their outsourcing results as well. We have to see the dark side of outsourcing as well. And 51% brought the outsourced activity back in-house because their outsourced unit was not giving them the required efficiency and effectiveness. So the most likely activities to outsource these days would be customer service, bookkeeping, financial and clerical aspects, sales and telemarketing, software programming, and mail rooms. These are the major concerns which people are outsourcing these days. Now, there are certain outsourcing disadvantages as well. As we have just seen in the previous slide, there are many companies, they called back their outsourced agreements. And outsourcing disadvantages can be, number one, customer complaints versus unexpected delays. That can be a big problem. Locked into long-term contracts that aren't competitive, another big issue. The firm doesn't learn new skills and develop core competencies. That is one of the issues, one of the problems companies face. So there was a survey of 129 outsourcing firms, and the results were half of the projects undertaken failed to achieve the anticipated savings. And the software produced in India had 10% more bugs than comparable US projects. So we can comfortably look at the statistics. We can comfortably look at the facts and figures that outsourcing is not always beneficial. There is the darker side of it as well. Now, there are 7 major outsourcing errors, which includes, number one, outsourcing activities that shouldn't be outsourced, fails to keep core activities in-house. And if you lose the core activities from your in-house operations, you might lose your entire business as well. The second major problem that why outsourcing is having errors is selecting the wrong vendor. Like picked a vendor that was not trustworthy or who lacks state-of-the-art processes. The third major problem was writing a poor contract, which means balance of power favors the vendor and you are locked in over a long period of time. Another issue can be overlooking personal issues. Like my area of expertise was outsourced, and if my area of expertise was outsourced, there is no need of me to be working for this organization anymore. Another problem can be losing control over the outsourced activities, that we are at their mercy. Another issue can be overlooking the hidden costs of outsourcing, which might include the transportation cost. And another, last but not the least point, would be failing to place an exit strategy. How can we reverse out of this deal? So these are the 7 major outsourcing errors, and we should be very much careful whenever we are outsourcing any of our operations. We should not be committing the same errors. Now, the successful outsourcing is based upon the fact that only outsource activities that are not related to the firm's distinctive competencies. You might remember the backside of your iPhone, which says designed by Apple in California and assembled in China. Okay, so the basic distinctive competency of the iPhone designing is kept in California by the Apple, but the assembling, which is not as such distinctive competency, can be outsourced to China as well. So remember, when there is total value added to firms, product and services, and when there is activity potential for comparative advantage, we need to see that when you make a contrast of these two things, what can be the successful outsourcing strategic options available. For example, when we say that total value added to firms' product and services is low, but activities potential for comparative advantage is high, we can go for tapered integration, which means produce some internally. When total value added to firms' product and services is high and activities potential for comparative advantage is also high, we can go for full vertical integration, which means produce all internally. But when total value added to firms' product and services is low and activities potential for competitive advantage is also low, we should go for outsource completely, which means buy on open market. And the last option is when the total value added to firms' product and services is high and the activities potential for competitive advantage is low, we need to go for outsource completely, which means use long-term contracts. So these are the 4 options available in our outsourcing strategy related to our functional concerns. Now, Remember, we are talking about a long array of strategies. We started from corporate level, then we moved to the organizational level and SBU level. Then we are talking about functional level strategies. At the same time, there are certain strategies which should be avoided, and they are known as dumb strategies. And the dumb strategies could be, number one, follow the leader blindly, which means we cannot do that too, but maybe it's not worth copying. Okay, so every leader is not supposed to be followed, and it should not be followed even blindly, because his destination might not be your defined destination as well. The second dumb strategy can be hit another home run, which means a pioneer company looking at get lucky again. Okay, so it might be difficult because new companies, they have come up with their own comparative advantages. They have come up with their own tactics and weapons of rivalry. So it would be difficult for you to regain your position once again. Another issue can be arms race, which means battles which increase costs and decrease revenue. So it would be just wastage. Then do everything, again, a wrong move. Offering something to everyone, trying to please everyone, that's a wrong move. You have to create the trade-off. Remember that thing always in your life, that you have to create the trade-off in every walk of your life. And then there can be losing hand, which means pouring your dollar amount or rupee amount down the net hole and investing because of prior commitments. So those commitments might not be fruitful anymore. So you have to be rethinking, reevaluating your concerns. None of these strategies will create a sustainable competitive advantage for the firm, so we better avoid them. Moving towards the end of our chapter, there are certain means for achieving strategies. And there is a very interesting concept which is evolving these days, and that is cooperation among competitors. A key term for this expression, cooperation among competitors, is known as co-opetition. Co-opetition would mean cooperation among competitors, and that is something which is getting popular these days a lot, particularly when you are thinking in terms of making industrial clusters. So in industrial clusters, co-opetition is again one of the most popular way of operations in a particular given environment. There can be another option related to joint venture and partnering. There can be another option related to mergers and acquisitions, right? So there can be another option known as first mover advantages, and there are certain advantages of first mover advantage as well. We'll be covering those in the next slide. And obviously we have already talked about outsourcing. So mergers, acquisitions, joint venture partnering, cooperation with competitors, these are all the means with which you can achieve your strategies by achieving and accomplishing your objectives. Now, there are key reasons why many mergers and acquisitions fail as well. And remember, there is a very interesting statistics about that, which is 53% of the joint ventures around the world, they fail. 53% mergers and acquisitions are challengeable. So these are the big numbers I'm talking about. So what are the key reasons why mergers and acquisitions, and in that matter, joint ventures, they fail? Because of integration difficulties. Okay, there might be possible financial integration, but other resource integration becomes challenging. There might be inadequate evaluation of target. There might be large or extraordinary debt associated with that. There might be an inability to achieve synergy because you plan to achieve synergy, but actually intangibly the synergy is not materializing. There might be too much diversification. Managers overly focused on acquisitions alone and neglecting the effect and impact on the other aspects, for example, culture. There might be a too large an acquisition, which you cannot hold, which you cannot maintain, which you cannot sustain. Difficult to integrate different organizational cultures. That can be another problem. And reduce employee morale due to layoffs and relocations. These are all the issues for which the options of mergers and acquisitions, they are not fruitful. So it's not always bad, you know, there can be certain benefits as well for which companies still go for, keeping in mind the drawbacks, they still go for mergers and acquisitions. And those options can be, the certain potential benefits can be, number one, to provide improved capacity utilization. It's a very good, important benefit. It can be to make better use of the existing sales force, to reduce managerial staff, to gain economies of scale, to smooth out seasonal trends in sales, to gain access to new suppliers, distributors, customers, products, and creditors, to gain new technology, to reduce tax obligations. So these are all the issues that why companies go for mergers and acquisitions. Now let's have a look on first mover advantages. And there are 5 benefits your book is talking about. The first benefit is secure access and commitment to rare resources. So that is the first mover advantage benefit. The second is gain new knowledge of critical success factors and issues. Then there can be gain market share and position in the best location. The second last point can be establish and secure long-term relationships with customers, suppliers, distributors, and investors. And last but not the least point is gain customer loyalty and commitment. So these are all the benefits which the first mover advantage firms would have. But at the same time, remember that the first mover advantage would cost a lot for particularly activities related to research and development. So that basically concludes our today's discussion. We have gone through objective setting at organizational level. Then we talked about organizational strategies. Then we talked about operational level strategies and functional level strategies. And we discussed that how different departments and functional areas can contribute towards the accomplishment of goals. And once the functional level goals are achieved, organizations would get their goals achieved. And when all the SPUs under the corporate umbrella, when all the SPUs have achieved their goals, the corporate level goals and objectives would be achieved and corporate level strategy would have been materialized. So that concludes our today's session. And inshallah, we'll be starting from the next chapter next time. So stay tuned. Jazakallah for today. See you next time.